Hi guys, I'm Brad Montgomery, and welcome to The Breakdown. And here we talk about science, psychology, and investing. Today we're going to be talking about adults living at home from the financial perspective. Before we get started, if you missed any of our past conversations, you can catch any of our episodes at kfoxtv.com/The Breakdown and listen along on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Now, let's break it down. And today we'll be speaking with some young adults who have lived at home past their teenage years and have them share some of their experiences. I want to start with Noah. And Noah, how long did you stay at home, live at home past the age of 18?
Yeah, so I've been living at home pretty much all my life. So I'm about to turn 20 in a couple weeks. So pretty much from the start to now, I've been at home. So yeah, I've been living at home since I'm going to school still. So
that helps.
Yeah, that does. Yes.
And as we jump off into that, what have you found to be just some of the benefits in general, and then some of the biggest benefits?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest benefits of living at home is kind of like that financial security, right? Just kind of like being able to know that I'm going to save money on rent, and kind of my parents were lucky enough to help me with my gas for my car too. So those are kind of the benefits of it, because I don't have to go spending my paychecks on rent. Since it's so expensive now. So
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And obviously, I lived at home past my teenage years. Mm-hmm. Wasn't bad, but it's not all roses.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So let's touch on that side as well. What are some of the drawbacks?
Yeah. So honestly, I don't know. For me personally, since I'm pretty much somebody who I work a lot, right? So I wouldn't say that I'm the most social butterfly ever, so I kind of think it works in my favor. But I do notice that maybe I'm not getting that full college experience, that some of my friends from out of town or maybe even out of state have gotten.
Good point.
So, sometimes I feel like I'm maybe missing out on that, but for me, it's kind of like, it's okay, I guess. But yeah, that is one of the drawbacks for sure.
And what are some of the things? So that's kind of interesting, because you're not immersed in that. You're not forced to be immersed in that.
Yeah.
So, and what are some of the things that you weren't expecting on either side that came along with staying at home?
Yeah, so things I wasn't expecting. Man, I'm not too sure, to be honest. I think maybe I wasn't expecting to... I will say I wouldn't expect to come home so late sometimes when I'll be out. And that's kind of awkward too, right? Because like my parents will already be asleep, and then I'm just like walking in,
and worry.
And then they worry, yeah. So I think that's probably one of the drawback, is that I'm kind of like also, I don't want to say disrupting my parents, because I know they're wanting to help, right? But I still think that I'm sometimes maybe disturbing their sleep patterns just a tad.
And do they... So like my dad was like, as long as you're going to work or going to school,
Yep.
and I did both. But did they have any kind of, just a couple of prerequisites, if you're going to stay here? Have they had anything like that for you? Anything they've wanted you to do, or?
Not really,
because you're already going to school anyway.
Yeah. So since I'm going to school, my parents pretty much just say school is your job. Okay. Just as long as you're doing something, staying active and stuff like that. Other than that, it's pretty much just take out the trash,
right. Cool things.
That kind of walk the dogs and stuff. But other than that, it's been pretty solid.
And how long do you plan on? So you're 20?
I'll be 20. Yeah.
You're going to be 20.
Weeks, yeah.
So how long do you plan on, once you graduate, once you get a job, or how long do you plan on staying at home?
Yeah. So, I'm looking at currently, depending on where I get a job at, that really depends. I mean, the market now, especially like from the financial aspect of being a fresh college grad, it's insane, right? Rent is crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So I think it's just kind of taking that step to evaluate what's best for me. But I think if I got a job maybe out of town, maybe here in El Paso or something like that, I would probably end up having to move.
Okay, so it'll be more dictate on where you end up going,
exactly.
where you end up landing. Okay.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Noah, for sharing your experience.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And next up, we have Leonie Monsivais, and she is our promotions producer, the promotions producer. And Leonie, how long after age 18 did you stay at home? I know your story is a little bit longer here.
So I stayed at home for approximately about 5 years until I ended up getting adjusted into like my own place. But 5 years I stayed after I was 18. But I lived with my parents my whole life.
And what was your experience like? Were you working? Were you going to school? Were you doing both, or what?
I was doing both. So I was going to school full time and then work part time. And then after I graduated EPCC, I started working full-time. And I worked full-time even when I was working at home, too.
Okay, so your parents were not too concerned, I guess.
Yeah, no.
Were there any stipulations, like anything they wanted you to do? Like, well, since you are living at home, would you do this, or would you, like any chores? Or like for me, like my parents were like, like I mentioned before, as long as you're going to school or working, then we'll bother you. Yeah.
Mine was pretty much the same. There wasn't really any stipulations. I didn't have to pay. I know some kids after a certain point of their age you have to pay rent. My parents never did that. I think at least in the culture in my house, it was very much I would prefer you to stay.
Okay.
So anything to get you to stay, we'll do.
Oh, they'd welcome that. Okay.
And then I would help out with groceries time to time, but it was nothing that was expected of me. It was just something like, I'm at Walmart. Do you guys need milk? I'll go grab some milk, and stuff like that. But I think it was because I was working, and I paid for like my own car and everything. They were just like,
and that was one of the benefits then too.
Yes, it was.
So were there any other benefits?
You know what? I think what I miss the most about living at home is the food. Okay. Oh my God, the food. Because
yeah, you're right.
You don't realize, especially, at least in my house, like my grandma and my mom were always cooking. And so I always had food. Always food was available. I had breakfast every morning. And then when I started living on my own, it was like, oh my God, I have to cook now.
Yeah.
And now I don't eat, like, it's rare I even get to even have breakfast.
Right, a home cooked meal.
A nice home cooked meal. And, they've come over since then, taught me a little bit of their recipes, but I miss coming home and having like, oh, Mija, look, I got beans and rice. And I'm like, oh.
That's awesome. And it's funny, you mentioned, and I missed that part too. I never thought about that, but yeah. And it was, what did you want? When I lived at home well into my 20s, working, going to school. And also, I like to cook. So just having the refrigerator full without having to go shopping, like the refrigerator was just there. It was magically full and ready all the time.
And the bad food was thrown away. You never saw the vegetables go bad or anything. It was just fresh food all the time.
So it's there's some little things that go along with it too. Now, what were some of the drawbacks? Some of the things that were not so great that you necessarily either expected or didn't expect?
So, in terms of drawbacks, I think, and I wouldn't even consider it that much of a drawback since I've always been more of a homebody, but being able to just have like, after you get to a certain age, like you go out and then you come home at like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yep.
You just like, even though I'm of age, it feels like you're sneaking back in.
Yeah, you gotta be quiet.
You gotta be quiet, you gotta be, or having friends over, like, you still kind of have to ask, like, hey mom, like, can Priscilla come over today?
Right.
At this time, like, you're not gonna mind. She never really cared, but it was just, now it's that kind of like that freedom of like, if I want to have a movie night with my friends or a slumber party, adult slumber party with some of my friends, I don't have to worry about my parents or whatever. I can have the TV all the way up.
Right.
I can have my music as loud as I want.
Right.
That's just kind of like some of the not so necessarily drawbacks, but some of the benefits.
Benefits. Okay, so you had definitely more benefits than drawbacks. Okay, cool. And was there anything that just came out of nowhere that wasn't expected on either side?
I think for me, at least I was kind of grown up to look forward to living in a dorm room, living on a college campus. And of course, my financial situation did not really allow some of that. And so I was just I had to readjust my expectations very quickly of, okay, maybe I'm not gonna go live on a university. I'll live still with my mom, but my mom, my dad, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And it ended up being fine because I'm not left with $100,000 worth of student debt.
So some of the college experience stuff that's been touched on, you kind of feel like but again, it was kind of the trade-off was you don't have the debt to worry about.
I don't have the debt and
maybe
everything.
The college experience you feel maybe missing out a little.
Yeah, and it's very much like very slightly. Do I wish that I had some of those like crazy college stories? Maybe, but then at the same time, my mom is fun.
Yeah, exactly. Family's fun.
We have a fun time on our own.
Sure. Okay. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your experience as well, Leonie.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we're bringing you in and your experience. How has it been either living at home or coming back home, or what was your experience as far as being at home past 18?
My experience, I went to college for about a semester, year basically, and I got a whole bunch of debt in, so I had to come back home.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, what do I do? My parents were like, just live in the basement, you pay rent, you pay for your vehicle, and just do what you can, but you're kind of like a roommate.
Okay.
And that's kind of what how it went for me, to where I was just working full time, paying off the debt, and then my parents were just like, we are out of food, but you pay for your own food, because I was a bigger boy at the time.
Okay. And you mentioned rent as well. Did they?
Yes.
Okay. But that allowed you to basically get rid of that college debt that you had accrued.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was less than actually paying rent, but it was still a decent amount, because I was trying as an 18-year-old to also pay for a vehicle while going to college. Not the smartest thing, but
fun. But yeah, that can add up. So that was one of the benefits, right? Being able to pay down that debt pretty quickly. That semester of debt, I believe you said.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what were any other benefits that came along with that?
Basically, I got to realize that I didn't go in the first time correctly. I went in full college thinking, yeah, I can easily afford it. It's like, I should have went to community college. I should have, gotten basic away, like just financially figure out a way better way of doing it to where I'm not, living well beyond my means.
Instead of just diving in.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Okay. And what were some of the drawbacks of living at home?
I love my parents. I do. They are not the great roommates that I thought they were.
Right. And you noticed that more as you were 19, 20, 22, 23, or was it right when you had moved in?
I kind of knew it even before that, because my parents gave me a lot of freedom. Just like, you're working a full-time job, you're going to school, you're doing sports, you are your own person already. Do that. And I was just like, I can't deal with y'all. Y'all want to do your own thing, and I'm too tired to deal with you.
So not the greatest. Okay. And I can see that happening. What were some things that came up along with living at home that you kind of weren't expecting, either good or bad? Because obviously I moved back home, and my parents and I got along. We got along fine at the end of the day. But I did notice every now and then a little bit, and with the coming home late sometimes a little bit,
little tension.
Yeah. So what were some things that were unexpected? That was something I didn't expect. What were some things for you that?
For me, they got a little bit more like, we expect you to do certain things because you are now an adult, but it was like, I was already doing my adulting, just not exactly how you wished.
Oh, okay. So they were more involved still.
Yeah, they were more involved than they were the previous year before I had left. But in that way, they're like, hey, you haven't focused on this. Now you need to focus. You've messed up. You should fix what you're doing now.
Okay.
So like positive and negative.
So maybe if they would have had a little more, you maybe going into it either thinking or hoping, probably just automatically thinking maybe they would have more of a hands-off approach.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thank you all so much for taking the time to have this conversation. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to a financial expert. And now that we've spoken with some young people who have experienced living at home as adults, we want to bring in a financial expert and see this side of it as well. We're with Pearl Contreras with Rise Federal Credit Union. And let's get right into it here. So as kids live at home, basically into their adult years or beyond turning into an adult, that first stage of their life, they can kind of save some money. That can be one of the benefits. Is that correct? And if that is one of the benefits, how better can it even be realized? What are some things that can even help that along a little more?
Definitely. So it can be a benefit for the child living at home, right? And so one of the ways that can benefit them is, of course, they're saving money for whatever that may be, whether it's saving up for a house or paying their debt off or paying their college.
Going out more?
Going out more. I mean, whatever the issue is, right, or the circumstance. But one of the benefits is that they can really learn how to manage their money if they do so correctly, like creating a budget, maybe paying their parents back or taking over a utility bill or something to kind of help their parents as well. So things like that.
Okay, and because I want to look at it from the parent side also, because can it be beneficial to the parent? I guess if they contribute in some way, maybe, right? So maybe they don't take over the mortgage payment or the tax.
Right. Realistically, right.
Right, but something, you were
So,
saying.
yeah, definitely. So it's that's a tricky question. So can it financially benefit the parent?
Right.
I don't see there being a lot of
Right,
financial
for them.
benefits for the parents,
Right.
right?
It's more
Because
something
they're
they can absorb. I
Yes.
guess. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So.
So it's more beneficial to the.
More beneficial for the child or the student or the adult child living at home, but it's also. I mean, the benefits for the parent would come in. When the child, adult child is maybe helping with the grocery visits or taking parents to the doctors or kind of in that sense, but
Right.
not financially. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of
Okay.
it's tough.
And what are some things that so then let's kind of pivot from that to what are some things that parents can do to kind of mitigate some of those expenses of a child living at home? I guess some say I've heard some people say even like I guess that they paid their parents a little rent or something like that or
Right. Yeah, definitely. So there's a few things. Of course, if the child is under 24 and going to school full time, then they can still be claimed on the parents' income tax. So
Right.
that would help, right? And then the second thing is the parents need to consider lending their children money and not gifting it to them, right? Because then that would help both parties. They would get money back eventually, right?
Right.
Hopefully, the parents would get paid back, and then the child would also learn how to make payments and be responsible with their money. And then lastly, it's really important for the child to set goals and create a budget. And depending on what it is they're saving for and how much money they want to put away each month, they need to get that set up and communicate that with their parents because that's important too. You kind of have like an expiration date, right? So I'm living at home now, but in 2 years, Mom, Dad, I'll be out of here because I'm planning to save up,
X
so
amount.
much, right, each month, and then just following up with that plan.
And now to go off of that too, so you're looking at does it make a difference how long they stay? Like from what you've seen financially, is it kind of a thing where it just gets absorbed over time and maybe even more so, or is it a situation where it can get more costly as it goes on? Or what do you see?
So what I see is it definitely gets more costly.
Okay.
And the longer they stay with the parents, I think it's harder for both the parents and the child to maybe break away, or they become complacent or comfortable or used to that help that mom and dad are giving them, right?
Okay.
So, and another thing with that I wanted to mention too is it's not good for a child, especially someone saving for maybe they're a first-time home buyer and they
Right.
want to purchase a house,
Right.
right? And so they're staying with their mom and dad until they can save up enough money for a
payment.
down payment or
Right.
something like that. But that actually affects them negatively in the long run because when they're ready to purchase their house, then a lender, like let's say Rise, Federal Credit Union, right, or whoever is lending them that money for the mortgage, they want to see rental history.
Oh,
you know
yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
right.
And so
That's
then
a good point.
so then that can affect them. But what they can do to offset that is still pay their parents a monthly portion of rent. Because even though that's not reported on a credit report, then lenders can still go back on bank statements, and they will, to see how much money they are putting aside and giving towards a rent payment.
So that can help with three things. It helps with
Mm-hmm.
like the budgeting process. It helps with the credit history.
Right.
And then it also helps the parents. I mean, that's kind of a triple. That's a
Right.
really good idea.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. And so we talked about the financial benefits for the child. For the parents, it's a little more tricky. Now, what is the kind of like financially? When do things kind of run out? Like every situation can be different, but you were talking about maybe they want to save to buy a house. You mentioned like a 2-year time period.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's other factors at play, but if you're just looking at financially, after how many years could things start to be more of a strain from what you've seen?
That's a good question.
Just
And
depends.
it really does just depend.
Okay.
Because we've seen all sorts of situations and circumstances. So that's a tough question. But definitely the longer it goes on, then the harder it kind of is to come out of that situation.
So then back to the child, then what is the most important thing that they should be focusing on, or the parents could maybe direct them to focus on while they're at home? Should it be, budgeting? Should it be saving? Should it be both? I mean, what should they be kind of like? You don't want to harp on the child,
Right.
but, that you're kind of on them and basically kind of steadily on them and reinforcing
Definitely.
with them.
Well, all of it is important.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really staying on top of their budget, creating that budget and following it, being consistent with it, setting aside that, monthly payment, like I said, whether that be a water bill or a portion of the rent or something, but being consistent with those payments. But I think it's very important for the parents to educate their children on those kind of financial responsibilities. Even if parents, and a lot of parents aren't, they're not financial experts,
Right.
But at least they know the basics, like how important your credit is and staying on top of your payments and, not falling behind with payments and things like that.
So how important is it to include children on these topics, these financial topics? And I want to go into two parts of this. The first part I want to talk about is going to be to what we're talking about, adults living at home. How important is it with your children if they are living at home? How, just have the conversation, start the conversation. And then the second part I want to talk about is just in general, because a lot of times you hear about parents not talking about or talking to their kids about finances. My dad finally started with me as he got older. I think he kind of looked around and was like, no, you don't really want to hide this stuff from your kids. You want to kind of bring them into the fold so they can learn more about it and maybe get a little bit of a running start.
Right.
So, but let's take the first one first. So how important is it if you do have a child that is staying at home to have the financial conversation? I mean, how important is that?
No, it's extremely important. It's extremely important to involve them or to have that conversation and communication, because I think that's what sets the expectations.
Okay.
Right? And then that's what kind of defines those boundaries and those lines of what the parent is willing to help with, what they can help with, and what they can't, and what the responsibility of the child will be. So it's extremely important.
Pretty much needs to be had, kind of almost.
Right, yeah. And there's also, from studies I've read, it's important to also create communal budgets where both, you create a budget together, mom, dad, and child, where everyone kind of has on one budget what their expenses are, and they track all that together.
Interesting. Okay. And then just the more broad conversation, expanding out just really quickly. This could be a whole nother subject, but a whole nother topic. But, how important is it to start talking to your kids, and what age should you start introducing them into the financial kind of world and side of things?
Right. So I would say, and what we teach is, what we say is as soon as possible.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a team that goes out and does financial education classes, and they start as small as like third grade students around there. Just knowing, teaching them the value of money and how important it is to save money. And so yeah, it's important to start as early as you can. And going back to how you phrased it the first time, I think it's interesting. I think it's part of our culture and a certain generation that tends to shy away from those things and doesn't feel comfortable talking about money, and doesn't, they don't feel, I don't know if it's that parents don't feel comfortable, or they don't feel they know it enough to share it.
Okay,
or
that could be interesting.
So and that's something else we see a lot. Yeah.
But it is important, and as young as you can start.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Pearl Contreras, Rise Federal Credit Union. And where can people go to find out information about lending and all that sorts of banking and all that?
Yeah, definitely. So our website is rise.us. I also wanted to mention that Rise does have financial counselors available to members. So if you need help with a plan for getting out of debt or saving up for a house or anything like that, then we have financial counselors that can help with that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was cool. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to comment, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can check out our past archive of episodes on kfoxtv.com or listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for breaking it down with me, and we'll see you next time here on The Breakdown.